SNX Radio invites you to unravel the mysteries of the cosmos with us as we dive into UFOs, cryptids, and everything otherworldly. As we navigate the night, we investigate the unknowns that spark our curiosity and challenge our understanding of reality.
Alright. From the Combination X quest, the truth is our guide in the vast expanse. It's where we reside. Hands up to the sky, let the bass ignite. Feel the groove surround us. Everything's alright. SNX Radio, let the truth ignite. Together we'll shine, bringing shadows to light. In this cosmic dance, we're connecting the dots.
Tune into the frequency, let's explore the spots. Heavy bass drops with tight beats.
Illuminate the shadows, the echo of our call.
On this roller ring we'll never fall.
Feel the energy rising, can you sense the spark? As we dive deeper into the cosmic arc.
Stories of the universe, mysteries unfold. In the heart of SNX, where the truth is gold. Every note we play, every line we write, crafting our legacy, shining ever bright.
SNX Radio, let the truth ignite. Together we'll shine, bringing shadows to light. In this cosmic dance, we're connecting the dots.
Tune into the frequency, let's explore the spot. Here in the spotlight, we're taking our turn. With the fire in our hearts, let the passion burn. SNX Radio's call, ringing through the air. Together we rise, together we dare.
So join us now, let the rhythm flow. With SNX Radio, we're ready to go. Unraveling the mystery side by side, we stand hand in hand. In this dance of truth, let the story expand. starlit sky. ET invites us to contemplate.
Heavy beats.
Feel that chill when shadows align. Experiences unfold one of a kind. Off-world encounters, truths they must find. Open your heart, release your mind. Take the leap, step into the night. With SNX Radio we will ignite. A symphony of strange where the bass drops low. Journeying deep where the unknown flows. What lies beyond the veil of sight? What secrets kept from our human plight? Coley's conversations stir the thread. An awakening call for the living and the dead. Take the leap, step into the night. With SNX Radio we will ignite. A symphony of strange where the bass drops low. Journeying deep where the unknown flows. As the echoes fade and the night draws near, the truths we seek become crystal clear. With SNX Radio, keep your mind open wide, for in this journey we all confide.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SNX Radio. I'm Coley, and tonight I have an absolutely amazing guest. I'm very excited about, and I've been talking about for a minute now. So I just wanted to say hello to everybody in chat. I see it's rolling, so I appreciate you all being here. I saw Kurt W75. Hey, Kurt. And we have Mel, nice, Madpack 777, and I apologize for not, but thank you for being here. Let's see. I know that if I miss anybody, you better believe. Oh, Benno's in the house. Midnight Night Watchers. Hey, welcome. I'm so glad that you guys are here and going to be with us tonight. So this will be pretty exciting, and for everybody to come. Hi, Tammy. Welcome. Just want to make sure that you like, subscribe, share. Definitely share this episode. I would love to get out what Derrell is doing and going a little bit more about all of that to the community. It's so important. It is so important that we support the real, authentic, and genuine people in this community, as you know, and you probably have heard me go on my soapbox about a time or two. So welcome, thank you everybody who's in the chat with the mods, with the wrenches, and our admins. You guys are so much appreciated. So I'm going to get into it. For those of you who don't know who our amazing guest is tonight, it is Derrell Sims. Derrell, when I was talking to him backstage, is exactly, I was not disappointed. If anything, I was like applauding his efforts. He is no nonsense. He is fact-based. And I asked him a question, and this is where I think everybody in the community could learn from this. Huge. Instead of me watching you go and give your testimony a few weeks later after you've sat and told me, one thing or whatever, however I've watched you on a show, if you don't have the answer, that's okay. Let's let people know where we have the facts and where we don't have them. So this is where Derrell definitely shines in the community. So what does Derrell do? I mean, he is not just an implant guy. No. I was actually referred to him a few years back over blood types, and we were talking about that and DNA stuff. But the alien hunter, is a pioneering UFO researcher and self-proclaimed expert on alien abductions. With over 38 years of dedicated field investigation, he's out there. He's based in Houston, Texas, built a reputation as a relentless, pursuer of physical evidence in the realm of extraterrestrial encounters, focusing on medical and scientific proof of human-alien contact. His work challenges conventional views of reality, posing that alien entities operate like a sophisticated intelligence agency. How interesting is that? Experimenting on humans. He Derrell, a little bit of background on him. He was a child experiencer since the age of 4. It's not always easy in relating and doing all this. He's been a part of many surgeries of implants being removed. He's a former U.S. Air Force military police officer. Thank you for your service, Derrell. It's also involvement in the CIA operative through aspects remain unverified. That they can say that all day long, but we know. He's definitely got his hands in so much different stuff. In the 1990s, he pioneered the study of alien implants, often ceramic, metallic, or plastic-like objects embedded in the victims' bodies without surgical scars. Alien fluorescence, I have a lot of questions to ask him about that too. Glowing skin patterns left as markers. He orchestrated the first public implant removal surgery in 1995, conducting over 24 procedures worldwide. He was just talking about that backstage, so I think he said 27 or 28 of them. So in recent years, he's still out there. I asked him, get tired, want to take it? He said no, he's out there still paving the way and pioneering this for everybody else. So if you guys you're not an experiencer and you've never been in this position, you won't understand exactly how hard this is. But I tell you, hats off to Derrell for all of this. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Derrell on here and I'll let him tell you about himself. Welcome, Derrell. I'm so excited to have you here tonight.
I'm delighted to be here, Coley. I've heard a lot about you, and now I get to meet you face to face. This is quite your audience. If they're anything like you, they got to be awesome.
Thank you. They are a great group of people. I'm so fortunate. They really are a great group of people. So yeah, they tell on the line, and I'm just like, Derrell, you're one person that I have always wanted to be able to talk to, like, this. So this right here is like so amazing, and to be able to give this to my audience is absolutely it's amazing. So I said back there, and I'm sure you heard what I said. I love the no nonsense. I love the fact that you're paving the way, and you have paved the way through all of this. And even when this wasn't a popular topic, I'm sure this was the most taboo topic during the time. And, for those who haven't experienced this or lived that differently as a child, what was it like? Can you kind of walk us through the earlier part of the years and what led you to this day today?
Well, how I became involved in the so-called alien phenomena is I was a captive audience at age 4. Literally, whatever it was walked through the wall, and I didn't wake up. I was switched on, and I'll explain some of that in the course of our evening. But in a nutshell, the entity was in the room. I sat up in the bed immediately, not waking up. I was completely awake instantly. The reason is because I had already been awake before that. I'd just gotten brought back from my event. And of course, I didn't know that at the time. I didn't have a clue. Nobody knew anything about aliens or abduction or anything in 1952. So as I was standing there looking at him, two things are paramount for your audience to understand about me and my first experience. Otherwise, some of this won't make sense. It'll sound like bravado and so on. And I've been doing this research now for over 50 years, and I'm older than dirt. But in fact, the first time they made it, I told them that's the wrong color, and they just had to change it. No, I just made that part up. I have an inordinate sense of humor. The entity was standing there looking at me he had perfectly round eyes, not the elliptical Hollywood version. They just literally, the model was different back then. Is the best way to describe it. He was very short, not much taller than me. And I'm sitting there stunned looking at him. I can't figure out what's wrong with this picture. First of all, it's in the winter. It's cold. I still got my covers wrapped around me. I'm so cold. It's terribly cold outside, out in Midland, Texas in the winter. And he doesn't have any clothes on. I can't figure out, who is he? Why has he got these weird eyes? He's got a little slit for a mouth, little tiny pinholes for a nose, and no ears. And as I keep looking at him, and it's important to understand that when I'm describing it as a 4-year-old, not as an adult. Right now, today, if this happens, one of us right now would say, "Oh, you must be an alien from Zoltar or Banlon or wherever they say they're from. But the fact is, I didn't know what the thing was. I couldn't figure out why I didn't have any clothes on. It was wintertime. And how did he get in my room? So the bottom line is, as I looked at him as a 4-year-old, I started from his face, went down from his eyes, down to his neck, little tiny skinny neck, and looked at his chest. He didn't have any mammary glands. I looked at him, he didn't have a belly button. And I looked down further, like little 4-year-old kids would, he didn't have a TT. So I'm completely like, how can this be? And of course, years later, when I began to study my event and find out what really happened, I realized if he doesn't have mammary glands and doesn't have a belly button, he didn't get here the way we do. He wasn't born, in other words. He was hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured. And the reason he doesn't have a genitalia is because he doesn't procreate. Now, what's interesting to some of your audience, and I won't have time to prove a lot of this to a lot of people, and I don't have time. But we have the evidence. But we've got pictures of real aliens. The stuff I've seen on the internet, I'm not convinced. 99% of it is real. Not convinced at all. But the images that we do have are from actual abduction events, where one of the people was a photographer, took pictures just as they were coming through the wall. And we've got some incredible imagery of a mantis being and a gray, and they don't look just like the Hollywood version. I'm sorry, they don't. So I'm going to have to go with the real stuff we're looking at. And we've also got some pictures of hybrid entities. They don't have a belly button. They don't have a genitalia, and so on. I mean, there are reasons for that. It's because they were hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured. They didn't get here the way you and I did. They weren't born. So we have to ask the big question, how did they get here? We'll get to that in a moment. The second thing, this is really important for your audience if they actually have an interest in what we're talking about here, is something strange happened in my event when I was 4 years old, much stranger than the event that I was witnessing. We don't know how that happened, but why it happened, we don't know. But you've heard the term hot mic. A hot mic is like when a president is doing like when Barack Obama was talking to President Putin privately, and he told him on a hot mic, and a hot mic means somebody's got a mic on and they're not supposed to. And he told Putin, he said, that's all right, I'll straighten all that out whenever I get back in as president. And everybody heard that. Of course, everybody won't know what that was really about. But my point is the hot mic is when you're hearing things you shouldn't. Well, what happened to me in my event, I'm listening to the entity communicate with me, skull to skull. In other words, I'm getting the messages, I'm hearing things in my head, which is really weird for me because I'd never heard anything in my head other than me talking. So he's talking to me and he said, I'm looking at him, he said, it's awake. And I realized it's awake, that it is me. And the question is, who's he talking to? And the amazing thing was, that's what hot micing means in this discussion. I was hearing who he was talking to in the room, beside the fact that he was talking directly to me.
Wow.
Now, that's kind of important because it's like you being on the phone talking to someone and you're getting to hear their thoughts as well. Besides what they told you, you get to hear the right story. Well, I've been an abductee for 13 years. My events ended violently at age 17, but I've been able to hot mic the entity all those events. Now, the reason that's important, and we don't know why, it's not some super skill, or I don't know why, I don't even know why it happens, but I only know it works. But I started listening to other entities in the room talking among themselves while they were talking to me.
Oh, wow.
You won't remember, or it won't be painful. And usually it was, and I did remember. But the important thing is I heard a lot of conversations going on with the entities that they did not want us to know about. So whatever they tell you consciously, I would put I would put a big question mark beside that. Because the stuff they told me, like it won't hurt when you get the implant when I was 12, it did. Blood poured out of my nasal passage and so on. And I did remember. But the really important thing was that I was overhearing the conversations with the guys who were in charge, the bosses, so to speak. People,
Wow.
other entities were involved. So that's kind of important because people always ask me, how do you know so much? You think you're so smart. No, it's not that I'm particularly smart. It's just that I can remember real well. When somebody tells me something, especially I'm not supposed to know, I pay real close attention to that. And that was the really mind-blowing experience for me as a kid, because I remembered what he was saying to me directly, yet I could hear who he was talking to, so to speak, over here to the side that I didn't see. He kept me focused on himself, not on the other entity in the room.
That's intense. So is this telepathically that you could hear, or is it odd, where everybody could hear it, let's say?
Well, yeah, it's telepathic because I could hear it.
Sure.
But the reason I had this verified a couple of different ways, that to me, me telling that it's just a story. Mm-hmm. But now going to getting scientific and other testing, that's kind of important because, and especially if you can redo that in another abduction event, and you start hearing stuff that, again, believe me, stuff they do not want you to know. You're never going to hear this stuff. They're never going to sit there and tell you why they're really here or what they're really doing. They're going to tell you what they want you to believe or what they want you to know. But they're not going to tell you the whole story. And sometimes they don't even know the story because someone else hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured them. They're the ones who know.
That's so true. I'll never forget when I was in surgery, I came out, they didn't have pain medication. They had switched over. I remember the nurse saying, she won't remember any of this. And I heard the whole conversation and I remembered the whole conversation. And that just took me right back to that type of hospital room talk that they think that you're not. That's so. And I think another important part that you just said is you learned something, okay, that you thought. So now you're going to take it and you're going to test it. Like I used to do this with ways of staying more conscious in experiences. What can I smell, feel, touch throughout the day? I would remind myself of doing this and testing it out. And is that what I'm hearing you say, that now, I've explained this back end part. Now I have a theory on this. Now I'm going to go out there and I'm going to collect the data to prove or disprove this.
Well, it's really an excellent point. Everyone, because our experiences are so bizarre, we should all question them, and we should question especially the intent of those who did this. For instance, many years ago, the CIA did experiments on civilians that they were not supposed to be doing experiments with. They used LSD and all kinds of things. The project was called MK Ultra. And the heartbreaker about the whole thing is that they did this without people's knowledge. Of course, people thought they were insane. Some of them committed suicide and so on. But the point is that whatever your experience is, you have to explore that and find out what happened. And of course, some people did. And thankfully, some scientists also looked into this and found out who was behind it. Well, to me, there's no difference between some illegal operation going on like that in the CIA or whatever. That's no different than the alien, in my opinion, doing the same thing on people, doing this stuff and not really being truthful about who they are, what they're here for, what are you doing, etc., etc. I mean, if I may, I'll give you I'm an ex-police officer. I'd like to give you a police illustration of my point. I've handled murder cases as well as other things in the military and so on, and also as a private investigator in the state of Texas. And if I walked up onto a scene and saw 8 people standing around a body with a knife sticking out of his back, my first question would be, who saw this? And all 8 of them raise their hand, and they give me 8 different stories. Guess how many people are going to get to go downtown? All 8 of them. That body did not die 8 different ways. And you've got 8 different stories. You've got a serious problem with at least 7 of them. So what's the point? So that obviously that would be true. The body only died one way. My point is, when I go to Ireland, they tell me, "Oh, you got to watch out for the wee folk. When they come and get you, they may not bring you back." And that's funny to listen to, but that's one witness. You go to Turkey, and they'll say, "Oh, you got to watch out for the jinn. They may not bring you back." And you go to the Native American, my tribe, the Aniunuia, the Salagi, the Cherokee, as our enemies called us. They still do, really. And they talk about the little people with the long hair, and they'll come get you, and they may not bring you back. My point is that you can go to 8 different countries and get 8 different stories. But those are screen memories of the same event. The body's still there, so to speak. In other words, those people are telling the truth as best they know it. But obviously, it didn't happen 8 different ways. So you have, as the investigator, have to go through all of that and find out what in the world is really going on with these screen memories and these other things that have happened to these people that are not consistent with the data that we're really uncovering.
That is so true too. And when you're talking about screen memories, just so people know that aren't familiar with all of this, can you kind of explain what that means when you're
Sure. When I was
screen memory,
when I was a little boy in my event, at the end of the event, when the entity realized that for whatever reason he can't get me to do whatever I'm supposed to be doing, he brought out the hardware, so to speak. The next thing he did was, and I'll explain this so people really understand it. He changed his visual image in my head. He didn't shapeshift and change into a clown. He changed my image in my head of what I was seeing. And he left me with this horrific image of a clown, pure white with red hair. And it was so scary. He wanted me to think I had a bad dream. And that's what all of this was all about. I kept shaking my little head, no, because I wanted to remember him for what he was, not for what he wanted me to think he was. So that's a screen memory. Now, what's funny about that is a lot of people, now I put this out back in late 1980s, early 1990s, about clowns being one of the screen memories that they leave on people's memory to try to make them think that they had a terrible dream when it wasn't. In fact, that's just an overlay. It's a false memory is what it really is. And then Steven Spielberg came out with several movies about aliens and everything. And really amazing, in the background of one of the movies, in the background in the forest, you can see this clown walking through the woods, looking at you. Every abductee that saw that movie knew exactly what that was all about. But the fact is that that's just one of many screens. Sometimes they'll use Casper, the friendly ghost, or they'll use other imagery. It doesn't matter. They'll use, in some cases, they've actually used my imagery to a person to make them feel comfortable because you can trust me.
Oh, wow.
But the fact is, it's them, it's not me. So
you realize this. How were you able to, stay? Is there something that you just think it's something within you? You kind of were able to keep that little bit of space where they couldn't completely manipulate you on it?
Well, the manipulation worked up to the point where I started seeing the image of him, and what I did was interrupt his transmission, so to speak. And I kept shaking my head and getting my eyes off of him, not paying attention to him. And when I did, the image went away, and there he was again. And I realized that whole thing is fake. That's not real. And that is one of the things that's important for people to know if you want to break their spell over you, so to speak, or their whatever you want to call it, hypnotic progression on you, or whatever you want to refer to it as. Once you do that, once you break that, you can see what's really going on and who's really behind it.
Wow. And let me tell you, I'm sure that wasn't a safe place to sit either.
Well, the the thing is that there are many different screen memories, and I talked to John Mack about this whenever he was alive, when I was in Istanbul, Turkey, and anyway, it's a long story, but the short version is, I told John, he said, "Why do you always get contactees and I always get, you get abductees and I get contactees?" And I said, "That's not really true, John." I said, "I get both." He said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, people look at you, John, with you have more of a, we don't understand them because they're far higher and different and bigger and better than us. So therefore, we have to, kind of respect them, even though we don't understand them." I said, "You come at it from a more elevated point of view, so to speak. Me," I said, I'm just an ex-cop. I said, when people take me out of my house or anybody out of their house, I said, that's called kidnapping.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me an abductee. You abducted me. Now, a contactee is a person who gets the same treatment, but they bought into the screen memory and they whatever they did, it doesn't matter if it was good or bad, because whatever it was for our highest and best good. My response to those folks is, that's exactly what the conquistadors and others told the American Indians when they came. How'd that work out for them?
Oh.
Well, we're higher and smarter than you are. We have weapons and boats and things you don't know anything about. So because we have better tech, we're obviously far better and far whatever. Well, that didn't work out for anybody in South America at all, and not many of them in the U.S.
I said it's the same thing, Native Americans. What are we even doing celebrating? I'm not trying to be, but it's crazy to think that way, but there is a part of people that they have a hard time saying that, because you are right. By definition, they did come. You did not have a choice. You didn't have a choice at 4 years old. You didn't give your consent, or were able to give your consent to have that.
Well, my parents, the next morning, when I got up, I was very upset, and they questioned me at great length. They're loving parents. They thought I'd had a bad dream, and I told them, no, I didn't, and they were very alarmed by that next night, which they had never ever done in my whole life. They put me between them so that I would sleep better, because they thought I'd had this horrific dream. I was sleeping between them, and I told my mom about this. She said, "I don't remember that." I said, "Mom, I couldn't possibly forget it. That's the only time you guys ever put me in the bed with you." And I was 4 years old, laying between you. I said, "Daddy slept like this with his arm over that way, and you sleep on the other side this way." And she says, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Because I was there, Mom." Just because I was little doesn't mean I don't remember anything. And I said, then I felt something wrong, and I opened my eyes very quickly, and I realized they're there again. And the next night, while I was between Mom and Dad, there were two of them at the end of the bed, and they looked identical. But here's the amazing thing about it. Whoever your handler is, the one that picks you up, I call it the cosmic pizza delivery guy, and you're the pizza, because he's going to deliver you somewhere. They look exactly the same, but the amazing thing is, if there were 100 of them in the room, I could pick out mine from any of them. I don't know why that's true. I just know it. And mine was on the right-hand side, and the other guy, whoever he was, looked just exactly like him, was standing next to him. And the next thing I know, I'm gone. They took me again. So I guess they didn't get the job done the night before, whatever it was, and they had to come back and clean the mess up. But so screens are kind of important, because you have to remember I'll give one last illustration. One young man was in an event, but he didn't know it. He thought he was watching his mom wash dishes, the dog laying next to Dad reading the newspaper, and he realized there's something wrong with this picture. He kept shaking his head. Again, you got to divert your attention from them. And when he did, he saw an alien standing in all three places, 3 different aliens. And they asked him, how did you know to do that? He said, well, I knew it wasn't true. He said, well, but that was your mom and that was your dad. That was your dog. He said, the dog died 3 months ago. They make mistakes. And if you understand they make mistakes, they're not perfect. They're not whatever these extraordinary powers we give them. They may not have that. But one day he told me, he said, you're wrong. You're 100% wrong. I said, please help me. I'm open-minded here. Talk to me. She says, well, they have spaceships. And I said, okay, I'll go with that. She says, so they are super intelligent. I said, young lady, I said, I can turn the lights on in my house, but I guarantee you I did not invent electricity.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, wow. People struggle with this. Yeah, I struggled with it myself.
The point is, I said, you can train a monkey to do most of what any alien out there is doing. Good night. The fact is that I said if you thought out a caveman, so to speak, we found a caveman in the tundra and thought him out and he lived. If we thawed that guy out and brought him into my house, never said a thing other than, look at this. I opened my door and he's like, whoa, look at cave. What is that? It's called a door. He didn't know what a door is. He goes inside and he looks around. I flip a light switch. What do you think he thinks? Oh, moon, look, the sun. You have a sun in your house. He doesn't know what that is. He thinks I'm supernatural because I have tech he doesn't have. And the fact is, I'm not any different than him. He just got unfrozen is all. Then we go over, you want to have a lot of fun with this guy? Make him think you're a time traveler. Just plug in your VCR, the movie 1 million BC. And he'll look, oh, look at that. And he was looking at this dinosaur. I ate that when I was a kid, Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm watching a time machine. Yeah, that's you over in throwing that spear at that Tyrannosaurus. He doesn't know. He doesn't have a clue. He'll think you're a time traveler when you're finished with him. The fact is, you're not any smarter than he is. You can flip a switch. You put a tape in a VCR and push the button. How much high-tech skill do you think that took?
That's an excellent point because when you don't know the situation, or let's say that somebody else goes in ahead and they understand the play, the motive and everything, and you walk up to it, you're going to think everything laid before you is something it's really not. I mean, that's well put.
Well, I went to a psychologist invited me up to Dallas, Texas in the 90s and said, I want you to work with some of my abductees here and contact these. And I said, okay. I said, so I worked with them and everything. And the amazing thing was she said, I want you to watch this new TV show they got on. I said, what's it called? And she said, the X-Files. I said, I'm really not interested. I just don't. I'm not really. I don't care. I'm actually busy doing stuff. I'm not. So anyway, she said, please watch this for me. I've recorded these for you. She said, they stole your research. I said, what are you talking about? She said, just watch. So she played the first one, turned it on, and this fluorescent hand came up. Hand with fluorescence on it, X-Files. And I said, that's our fluorescence. And she said, I told you. And we went on and on. And in that particular one, Mulder was living in this trailer, in a little travel trailer type thing. And on the wall, they had this big printed out story. It's called the December 8th, 1992 Mass Abduction by Derrel. I said, that's my story. That's my work. And she said, I told you. And later, the X-Files interviewed me personally. And I wouldn't go on their show. And they got mad and said, why not? And that's because you stole my stuff. And they said, of course we did. And it's great. It's great stuff. That's but you never gave me credit for any of it. You just stole it. And they said, that's right. Anyway, I finally went on the show. It was funny the way they tried to do it. They said, I told them, no. And then they finally said, look, Mr. Sims, You're a 4th-degree black belt in martial arts. You have 2 instructorships in scuba diving. You're a hypnotic anesthesia therapist. You're a master hypnotherapist. You've got done all these things all your life. If there was a molder, it would be you. I said, nice try. It's not working. And anyway, we talked for a while longer, and they finally said, please, just come on the show. If you don't like it, we'll cancel it. I said, okay. So they did the show, and they sent me the video of it. I have the actual video of my interview. They said, we can't use it. And I said, why not? He said, exactly what you said. That your research is the horrific part of it. It's true, unlike our stuff. He said, but we can't show some of the stuff that really happens in these abductions like you recorded and got evidence of. And they went on and on. And I said, okay. He said, we're going to do something we've never done for anybody. We're sending you your own interview with the X-Files. He said, they've never done that before. They won't do it. And he said, it's your gift from the X-Files. Thank you. So I'm delighted now I've got it. And I'll probably put it in production and actually let people view it. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Wow. I mean, just to know all that is unbelievable, to have that kind of confirmation. When you were talking before, when I described this in my experiences, I said, I think, and from what I saw in them, and I don't know how much of it was screened, how much of it wasn't, but their skin was like a old fluorescent. It reminded me of like the old school kind. They used to paint on the bottles and it glowed. And I was like, glowed. I was like, was it like reflective of light? But it was that fluorescent. And when you were describing that, I was like, it just took me right back to that moment. And I was like, I've seen this. I've talked about this. I'm wondering if that's similar to what you were talking about with the fluorescent, the alien glow of what that was, because there's nothing as like that green color you could only, as like in the 80s, 90s, it was really popular and it was thick and you painted it on and it was kind of that off-white color during the day. And it was like, I said, I don't know if they're reflective of the light or what's going on, but it gave that fluorescent glow.
Well, you're right on target. The term "little green men" actually, there's a story behind that. The alien, and we've done this in experiments and so on. But basically, the fact is, the alien has in his skin coloration. If you turn the black light on, and some people have in their abduction encounter, they have a black light on in the room, and when the alien came in to pick him up, it'll really scare you then, because he doesn't just look like an alien. He glows in the dark. I mean, like a Christmas tree. And it flat scares people bad because they don't know what to think of that. No, what does that all mean? How does that happen? And my point is that the aliens. Okay, the fact is we know they have a fluorescence on them, but what a lot of people don't know is that when you, and I'll qualify this a little bit for the people here. Everybody always tells me when I go to a conference, well, I've been abducted, and I said, well, how do you know that? Well, I remember the event, or I remember something. I said, but that doesn't mean that you were actually taken. Oh, I was taken, all right. I said, well, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you that about 80% of the people that have these events didn't go anywhere. They didn't. I said, I'm not picking on you. I'm just trying to help you here. And I said, that it doesn't mean the things they did on you or with you weren't real. They were. They just did them there in your head and maybe on your body, maybe. But only about 20% of people are actually taken. And I said, so those people, I said, we have a real special interest in, because they will have specific markings on them. And one of them is the fluorescence. What do you mean? I said, that particular fluorescence, it tells us a lot. I said, some of the fluorescence is simply in a simplified form here is due to casual contact. In other words, if they grabbed you by the hand like that and carried you away, and you told me that story, what do you think the first thing I'm going to do with my $500 black light? I'm going to be checking you. Because if he's touched you and done that, and within 24 hours, the fluorescence is going to show up on you. And the interesting thing is that fluorescence is amazing because you'll have, in that case, you would have 3 or 4 fingers like this, and be in a glowing, usually a bright green fluorescence on your arm. And when people see that, it's one thing for you to tell the story. It's another thing for you to.
Oh, I was just thinking, you're right. You're so
you
right.
hit yourself with a black light, and it'll freak you completely out because you realize, oh my God, it wasn't a dream. It wasn't anything like that.
Oh.
So it bothers people a lot because now they have proof that. And I'll give you one quick example. One abductee came up to my house one day, and she's very, very, very truthful and very discerning about her experiences. And she said, Derrel, they took me and they made me, it was just a dream, I'm sure it was. I said, just tell me what you think. You don't have to prove anything, just talk to me. She said, they showed me with this little horrible looking little baby like one of them. And I said, okay, then what? She said, they told me to suckle it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And they said, if you don't do it, it'll die. And of course, she bought into that. And she nursed it. And she said, I'm really upset by doing all that. And I said, okay, when did that happen? Last night. I said, good. Thank you for coming over. Told my wife, you take her in the other room and you examine her from head to toe, but particularly on the side of the neck, in her hand, and on her breast. And my wife came back and says, you know the coloration nobody knows about? I said, yeah. She said she's got it. On the side of her neck where the baby the slobbered on her neck, so to speak, and on her hand where she held it, and said it's on her breast. She said she suckled something. And anyway, so that wasn't a screen memory. And there's good, solid evidence, as far as we're concerned, indicating that she had a real event. And she remembered a lot of it as well. But she still thought it was a dream because it was just too much to believe in, too difficult. And
you're right, because what you said before is so true, because I sit here, but if I had to, and I even was talking about this the other day when you had come up in conversation with Jay Michael, I said, man, to actually have confirmation, to actually see that all of this, you have to, that's a whole new level of acceptance and really telling this and going out there, and you've gone under all of this. Not only that, you're going out and doing and helping other people. How did you even wrap your mind to accept any of this? That had to have been just a mind, a whole mind tangle, I guess, in itself.
Well, let me tell you 2 aspects of this that are kind of important for your audience, because if I were people in your audience, I'd be saying, well, it could be this, it could be that. Lots of things glow in the dark. That's true. You think we didn't know that or didn't study that? So the first case I had of this, a lady in Houston, Texas, a very upper crust lady, I mean, financially. And we were working with her, and I said, do you mind if I check you with my black light? And she said, for what? And I said, I don't know. I said, I have intuition showed up in my handwriting. And I said, I'm very intuitive about finding things out. That's really a good, important thing to have if you're a police officer investigating cases. And she said, sure. I said, we're just going to look at your face, exposed skin on your arms, and so on. And as I looked at her face, nothing showed up. And I raised up her arm, and there on the inside of her arm was a Mandelbrot set. Mandelbrot said it's a mathematical configuration of the peace, harmony, so to speak, in the middle of it. And the outside is a configuration of constant change, of chaos, order and chaos. And anyway, she looked at that and said, "What the blankety blank is that?" And I said, "I don't know." That was the first case fluorescence we found. And like a rape victim, she ran to the bathroom and started scrubbing as hard as she could to get that whatever it was off of her. The harder she scrubbed, the brighter it got. Now, what do you think I would do? I took a sample, of course, and we got drawings of it and everything else, photos. But the important thing is, not long after that, a professor from MIT called me and thanked me for my work and everything. He said, "I'd like to do a scientific paper on your work on fluorescence." I'll give you a clue. Nobody at MIT writes papers about UFO people, scientific papers about fluorescence. That ain't going to happen. I said, "Nobody's ever going to publish it." He said, "Want to bet?" He said, "I'll write it with you if you like." And he said, "The fact is," he said, "I think your work is so stunning." He said, "You have, in my opinion, as a professor, a tenured professor," he said, "you're so far ahead of us, we don't even know where you're at." That's a nice, wonderful statement, but I just kind of swells the ego, but so what, He said, "No." He said, "Your work deserves a scientific paper, I'm telling you." He said, there's more to, he said, "You're discovering things we didn't even know existed." And I said, "Well, that's, I'm elated to hear it." And so the fluorescence has got a background and a history a little bit. And we've got about 15 or 20 samples that we would love to have tested. And one top scientist called me here a while back and said, "You need to get those tested right away." And I said, "Well, I'd love to, but I'm just I'm just a private investigator." And I said, "I spend all my money on the UFO phenomena." So basically, I said, "I don't have money to do that." He said, "Well, these will run you about $14,000 a piece." And I said, "I don't have enough money to do one." So that's the reason I'll be putting some flyers out in the near future this year to find people that are angel investors or others who are interested in our work, certain parts of our work, and that they might be interested in funding some of it.
And that can be done through your website, Derrel?
It'll come out on the website eventually. We had a problem. One of my people is on the line tonight as well, and here is a number of our people are, and she ordered a couple of my books through the website and didn't get them right away, which is normally I get the email instantly, and all that's taken care of. And she called me and said that she didn't get them. I said, "Well, it doesn't matter. I'll send them out to you regardless, and I'll have one of our web people find out what the problem is on the site." But we'll send those out to her right away. But the stuff, a lot of things. Okay, a lot of things ought to be on that website that aren't. Most people look at it and say, "Wow, that's really neat." It is to you because there's not a lot of stuff you don't. There's a lot of stuff you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If I put everything on it, it would be 50 times the size it is.
Oh yeah, and you'd have a database going.
I guarantee you, it's gonna wow a lot of people when I start publishing pictures and pretty much what we want to do, and with our next subject and everything. I mean, for instance, like some people are only interested in implants. I've conducted 27 surgical interventions from India to here, and we've got 10 people that go to surgery this week. This week, we're confident that there's something viable there. I've got 90 people that we're looking at just in that one area. 99% of the people that claim to have an implant don't. I'll say that twice. 99% of the people think they have an implant don't. And because if you read this stuff on the internet, you're just going to get swamped with a bunch of stupid stuff. If I discovered it, and we've done lab tests from Los Alamos, New Mexico Tech, Stanford University, in York University, and the Royal Society of Chemical Engineers have looked at our work, we probably have got our oars in the water, so to speak. So most people think, well, I got abducted, so I must have been chipped. You don't know what you're talking about. First of all, it's not a chip. And second of all, the chip only has a span of about 5 feet, if you're going to use those terms and so on. So the fact is, most people don't even know what an implant actually is. Well, it means that's you talking. That's people saying whatever they think it is. They don't know. They haven't looked at the science. They haven't looked at the data. They haven't looked at the actual entities. They haven't looked at the actual implants. They've not tested them, not done things with them. I have. So I kind of have a little bit of a background to answer a few questions.
Here's where I want to give you a standing ovation. Like this, we need more people like this right now. What he's saying, like right now. What do you see characteristic wise that people with implants compared to what's being spread across as the internet as alleged implants? What's
anybody?
There's so many of them. Yeah.
Anybody that's got a foreign object in them, they always call and say, "I got an implant," and they'll send me the pictures. And I'll say, or the X-ray, and I'll look at that's not an implant. Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, because I was abducted. I said, that doesn't mean you have an implant. It means you got abducted, probably. And I'll give you a case point. It's a hand of God, true story. The guy came to me and says, look at this. He said, look at that. It's a sphere. He said, that's exactly what they find, isn't it? I said, now, how do you know what we find? How do you know? I haven't told anybody. How do you know? Well, I just know. Okay. So fill this room with your knowledge. And so anyway, when I did have the money, I took him to surgery. I didn't believe a word of his story. Does he have a sphere that there? I said, it looks like a BB to me. He said, no, it's not. It's a real implant. It's really real. I said, okay. Took it out. Put it on film and everything, sent it off to Scotland to a friend of mine that was a metallurgist there. He checked it out, did this beautiful, flowery, scientific language. I said, knock it off. Don't speak to us in chemicalese. Speak to us in English. What is that? He said, it's a BB. And I called the guy back and said, well, we've had it looked at and your implant's a BB. He said, really? Oh, I thought that was the other hand I got shot in when I was a kid. I said, you wasted all my money and all that time for something already. He said, well, why did you do it? I said, because if I don't do it, people like you will say you're part of the cabal. You wouldn't look at my implant because you knew it was real. And that's it. I said, now I got you. I said, I needed you for
ended it right there
as a negative. He wasn't trying to lie or cheat or anything like that. He just didn't know. And a lot of people just have marks, cuts, bruises, and scars on them. We don't know where they came from, but some of them we do know because we've got a good database. And one lady that's on site tonight, as a matter of fact, she sent some bruising to me, and I looked at it, and I said, that happened about a week ago. And she said, you're absolutely right. I said, we can tell by the coloration of the bruise. Basically, I said, look, they're like with fluorescence and bruising, there are two kinds of bruises we look for. One is procedural, and first one is casual contact. If you've got a big thumbprint on your arm where somebody held you down like this, probably somebody held you down and bruised your arm. They were pretty strong when they did it. And then you claim an abduction. Well, that might account for that. You look with a black light, you'll probably find some fluorescence on that thumb as well. The second thing, we'll find certain types of triangular or different types of bruising that indicate that an instrument was used. That's called procedural grouping, or procedural implant, or procedural fluorescence, or plant fluorescence that has very specific markings. We have markings on an abductee. This is one of the most remarkable cases I've ever seen of fluorescence. The person is a cop. She was abducted. This is really unusual. 3 times in probably a 10-day period. That's real unusual for that to happen. But she had 3 separate kinds of fluorescence on her. We could tell by the coloration of it, the thickness, the density of it, because it's subdermal and on contact. You can't get it off. Can't wash it off. You can't. We've had doctors use various chemicals. You can't get the stuff off. The body will finally absorb it. But we took it. We made a whole slideshow out of her presentation, and we even saw some of the instruments they used to work on her. They had handled them, and it was fluorescent laying on her arm. We could even see that. It's one of the most amazing fluorescent presentations I've ever done. It's just absolutely astounding.
And is it like the green glow color that they used to? The only way I can describe it is those old fluorescent.
Yeah, well, let me go a little further here for your audience.
Sure.
Back in 1992, I was in San Francisco, and back then animal mutilations were getting to be pretty hot. The guy who was behind a lot of the study, so to speak, was a Fife, Alabama cop, friend of mine, and he wanted to interview me for the conference. I said, okay. And he said, well, I want to check on you, ask you a few questions about animal mutilations. I said, okay. I said, well, hey, buddy, I don't really know a lot about it. When he's a cop, just because you tell a cop you don't know something, that doesn't mean anything to him. He didn't believe your story. And right off the bat, and he's a good cop too, good detective, he said, I want to know what you know about cattle mutilations. And I said, well, I've read a lot. I mean, I've looking at some of this stuff, and we looked at a few things, and I want to know what you know about cattle mutilations. So I said, okay. I said, your cattle glow in the dark. He got in my face and said, how in God's name did you know that? Who told you that? I said, well, look, I'm an ex-cop. I said, I'm not stupid. I think I can do my own research. But how did you know they were glowing in the dark? And I said, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I said, my cattle glow in the dark too. He said, you mean the abductees? I said, if they get handled, yes, of course. And what makes you think you're any different than any other cattle out there? I said, you're only interested in yourself. You're only a higher being in your mind. The alien, whatever they want to do to an animal or you, I said, they don't really care which one it is. I said, I've got people that have been mutilated. I said, we don't tell people like that, usually on the internet or anywhere. I used to do a medical presentation for doctors. You guys don't get to hear it. You know why? Because it doesn't sell, and because you don't like it. Well, those are higher beings. They wouldn't do that. Then you have to ask yourself the question, why are they doing that?
Yes. And I guess I'm so blown away because I didn't hear about this fluorescent stuff. I came across it when I was doing research a few days ago for the show. And I guess in my mind, I always with the absorbent of light, I always got stuck on it. So I'm like, I wish I would have known while this was all going on. For people that are out there, is this still something? Is this still the case? If they're, suspecting they might have this, to get a black light and look and see on their body if they have that residual glow? Or
I brought a little demo if you'd like.
Yes. Oh, yes, okay. Please.
I'm going to turn the light off here for a second. Hopefully people will be able to see this. I've got a little fake alien hand here. No, I didn't chop it off. It's fake. But on it, I put some fluorescence. You can't see the fluorescence unless you have a black light on it. You see the green fluorescence on the hand? Well, when they grab your wrist, where do you think that fluorescence is going to go? on your wrist. Now, the weird thing about it is you're not going to get rid of it by washing your hands. If you don't check yourself with a black light, and we have black lights on our website as well, little tiny black lights sell for like $5. And the little black lights, a wonderful thing about them, you can put them on your keychain and check yourself every day. Especially if you've had a weird dream that you really can't imagine that it really, really happened. Check yourself. And if you glow in the dark, now I gotta tell the truth on this. We had one lady come to Roswell where I spoke for 23 years, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Sands, oh my God, I'm coming to your workshop. Look at me." And she looked at me, and I pulled out my $500 black light, and I shined it on her, and I said, "Well, there's some fluorescence on you." She said, "I've been abducted." I said, "How do you know that?" She said, "Well," I said, "I don't have any memory of it." And I said, "There's no bruisings, no anything." I said, "So what makes me believe you were abducted?" "Well, I got fluorescence." I said, "Listen to me carefully. Having fluorescence on you doesn't mean you were abducted." See what I mean? I said, I'm being very respectful here. I'm looking at your age. You look like you're in your 80s. She said, "Yes." I said, "Very pretty lady. And do you play bingo?" She said, "Yeah, I played last night." I said, "What was the color of fluorescent marker you were using?" She said, "Bright green." I said, "That's exactly what's on your hand." "Oh."
Wow.
I said, "Playing bingo doesn't make you an abductee. If you don't even have memory, there's no mark, nothing else to indicate that you're an abductee, no history, nothing." I said, "Just because you got a green mark on you from playing bingo doesn't make you an abductee." I said, "Don't think stuff like that." I said, "You can't get this stuff off." She washed her hands and came off. I said, "You can't get this stuff off. It won't come off." People have done, I've even seen people use sandpaper and try to get it. You just cut your skin up. So we take samples of these because we want to know what it is that the skin of the alien is exuding here. We want to know what that is.
What did you find? Because I'm very curious now, because this is like hitting so home. I'm just like, wow.
Think of it as sweat from the alien. And whenever they touch you, it leaves it penetrates your skin subdermally on contact. And once they touch you like that, you put a black light on it and show it. You can scrape it. You can wash, take 50 baths you like. It won't make any difference. It won't come off. And within a day or two, 48 hours, I like to use the term, within 48 hours, you have to check your evidence. I like that because it's 48 hours is the magic number because it starts to dissipate or go away. In very, very, very rare cases, we have fluorescence that lasted up to 2 weeks on somebody. That's extremely rare. It's a different kind of fluorescence.
Wow.
I'll
So it's
send
not
you-
something that they're maybe necessarily, or is it a different type or breed, or?
It's what I'm going to do for you as the host is send you some of my notes on fluorescence and pictures, and you can show them to your audience later if you'd like. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
MUFON wanted to know all about that one time, and it really weird. They sent an attorney friend of mine, and she said, "This is awful for me to say this, but can I do a fluorescent presentation, your presentation for MUFON?" I said, "Why don't they ask me to do it?" She said, "I think you know the answer to that." I said, "I help them guys out more than anything." She said, "I know that." And I said, "Sure, I'll give you a fluorescent presentation to do." And she did. My point is that there's a lot more to it. That like the cop said to me, he said, "Wait a minute, what do you mean you're cattle?" I said, "Abductees, of course." I said, "There are cattle. That's what we all are. Just ways we're treated by some of these entities." And he said, "It's their different colors." I said, "Yes." "Oh my God. Did you find a pattern?" I said, "Yes." I said, "We found fluorescence that was casual contact, them touching you. We have fluorescence that a procedural piece of equipment was touched and left fluorescence on you. It's obvious that's not hand, that's a particular piece of equipment. And then we have another kind of fluorescence that we don't even discuss it for people. It's so rare that we're looking for people that happen to. And I said, anyway, it's just fantastic. So I'll send you a presentation on that with some stuff on it, and you can show it to your audience.
That would be fantastic.
They can check themselves with a black light. You'll get a black light out of
You're the first person I've heard talk about this, and it's so mind blowing for me because it hits home. And so I understand like this is only a small portion of it. I appreciate you going there, and I will take that information and pass it along because I think it's so important. Everybody would kind of look at me really oddly when I would talk about the glow in the dark. That's the only way that I had the words. I was just like, it's like that old glow in the dark, thick, like that's what their skin even reminded me of it when it wasn't, because I've seen them, in the not, and it seemed like whatever that LED light was, we didn't have LED light when I first experienced that. Not like we do now. Not, it's not, in every room in the house. And I said, they were just like, so it's so important, but you're really the first person that I've ever heard go in and talk about it. So it's mind blowing for me, and yet a little scary because I think as an experiencer, you were abducted, whatever you want to put, I have a hard time digesting a lot of it myself.
Sure.
So this is huge for people.
Well, I'll send that so I'll answer a couple of questions from the audience here.
Yes.
I do not have any contact with Bob Lazar, never met him. Like some of the things he's done, but I don't know him personally. I have no connections with him. And the fluorescence I discovered in 1992, and it was so new that, like I said, an MIT professor and the National Institute for Discovery Science, after our first surgeries, Bob Bigelow called me on my cell phone. I'll tell you the conversation in short. You'll like it. Derrell, this is Bob Bigelow. And I said, well, what do I owe the honor of this call, sir? Well, you seem to discover things that we never even knew existed. And I've got like 18 or 19 of these scientists, and you've got us all wondering here, how do you find so much evidence that no one else has been able to find? You have to understand that's a trap question. He's waiting for your ego to explode here and you to act like a 3-alarm idiot. And I said, well, it has nothing to do with high intelligence, obviously. I said, if you want to find a donut, Bob. And he said, I've got three people on the phone with me, 3 other people, and they all have PhDs. One has 2 PhDs and an MD. I said, well, that's good to know. I said, if you want to find a donut, you'll find a cop.
Oh my God.
They didn't laugh. They didn't laugh.
No, I bet
It
not.
was
I
not
bet
funny
not.
to them.
No.
And I said, I said, you think that's a joke, but it isn't. I said, you want to find physical evidence? Go find a Native American tracker that's an abductee. They'll know what to do. And I said, that would be me. So I said, you think the alien implants are the only thing that I discovered? You think that's it? 50 years of work, and you think that's it? That's all I've done? I said, I think I can do a little better than that. I said, in fact, these entities can actually be caught. You know what you're doing. And I said, everybody thinks they can't be. They're interdimensional. They're from another time. They're from this, they're from that. Remember the BCR where you put the 10 million BC in and showed it to the guy out of the ice, the caveman that you thawed out? He'll think you're a time traveler if you show him that movie. All you got to do is tell him that's me over there and that's you over there. He'll believe every word of it because he doesn't know. Many abductees know this is not any discredit to them or me. We all fall into that same category. So because someone has got bigger and better tech than you do, they must be far better and far smarter and from a bigger and better place than Earth. Really? You have to ask yourself a big question. This is the big one. Because they asked me that question. Where do you think the alien comes from? What planet? I mean, you like I said, well, sometimes they'll tell you we're from the planet Banlon. I said, that's a deodorant.
Yeah.
Don't you get the humor? We're from Zoltar. We're from all these different planets. I said, they're all planets that we can't find anything about. I said, it's like they're making it up or have been told this is the way it's what you're going to tell them. I said, now, if you believe like the Native Americans did in South America, and those guys showed up with the ships and the guns and the horses and things they'd never seen before, that they're far higher and better off than you are because they have all that stuff, you're opening yourself up to be conquered. I said, one of your top scientists who had Lou Gehrig's disease, he died here a while back, he said, all you people out there at NASA sending messages in outer space to these aliens, he said, stop doing that. He said, why in the world would you invite a culture like that to planet Earth? Because we were learning about their technique. He said, you're not paying attention. How'd that work out for Native American Indians? He said, when an advanced culture is going to show up to you, what makes you think they like you? What makes you think they're going to help you? Why number one, they will subjugate you. Two is get rid of you and take what you got. He said, that's what advanced cultures do. He said, we're an advanced culture. When we go to a poor country in Africa or South America somewhere, what do? We're going off for money, buy off their politicians and take their resources. That's what we do. It's no
exactly what they do. Yeah.
Same thing. It's what makes you think the alien's going to be any different.
And we're going to celebrate it and make you be thankful for it, or make you think that you'll be thankful for it, as we poisoned you with blankets with measles. You know, it doesn't make any sense.
So to me, my answer to the big question on that was this. I said, in my opinion, these beings have been hatched, cloned, made, manufactured for the purpose of making you think they're from another planet. They're not. Their DNA comes from here. It was manufactured out there on a craft that was about 100 and some miles long, maybe bigger. I said, we have a film of it. It's 50 miles thick, 600 miles across. We have a film of it. It wasn't taken by us. It was not photoshopped. It was taken 1992, before you could do all that weird stuff. And it was taken by people who were observing the moon at the time during a major mass abduction that took place in 2 states and several cities. The point is, that's where the big stuff happens. They have stuff on that craft. You wouldn't want a planet. Everything you could ever want is there. Why would you need a planet if you were an alien? I mean, what do you think he eats? Ice cream or whatever your favorite food is? That's what you think he actually sits around and eats. They have a big ice cream machine they eat. No, you're wrong for a lot of reasons. Anyway.
So do you think it's to, so basically like get it off of here so it can't be walked in on by somebody, or is it more like a movie set that can be controlled, or maybe, I guess, both?
Well, the fact is that what is the first natural thing that anybody says whenever they've had an alien abduction? Oh my God, aliens abducted me. How do you know they're aliens? Well, I have to be. Like that lady told me, she said, they have spaceships. They're so smart. I said, sweetie, they have usually 3 fingers or 4 fingers and no opposing thumb. How do you build a spaceship with no opposing thumb? What do you mean? I said, they didn't make it. Someone else did. Someone a lot smarter. Somebody that made, hatched, cloned, or manufactured them to make you believe this whopper. I said, it's taken me 50 years to finally put this picture together. And we didn't do it accidentally or dream it up because it sounded like a good idea. It wasn't like that at all. I used 7 different hats, and in my investigations, all 7 of them look at your case immediately. Some of them don't even agree with each other. It doesn't matter. They come up with remarkable conclusions, remarkable investigation skills. But anyway, back to the story real quick. I said, to me, I said, if I may be so bold, somebody, just like in the movie Star Wars, where it says, long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far. Someone a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away came here to find you. You know why? Because you're not anywhere else. You're only here. And somebody's interested in what you've got. And I said, there's an old biblical statement I like real well. It says you were created wonderfully. Most of us have no clue what that means, but somebody out there does. They get it. And you don't. And if you don't get it, that's all the better. Because now you don't even know what it is you're looking for.
Now you're just a useful idiot going out there and regurgitating it.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
You're just like what the cow's waiting for the slaughter, What is that? That's grass. You mean we're eating grass? That's what you do. You're a cow. So get over and eat some more grass. So to me, I said, somebody out there has come a long, long way. I said, your scientists are telling you stuff like, well, you're not much more than swamp gas. You're just you're just nothing but you're just a slime out of the bottom of the gene pool. That's all you really are. I said, you keep believing those idiots as long as you want to. But somebody has come a long, long way that's a lot smarter than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't think you're pond scum at all. There's nothing like you anywhere in the universe. Well, there may be millions of races out there. There may be. Mahabharata, if I'm not mistaken, says there are over 200,000 kinds of intelligence in the universe. There may be. I haven't met them all. I don't know. But I'm telling you one thing, the 7 guys that you're looking at here, the reptile and all the other guys, you better be wondering who they really are. One guy asked me in a show a while back, he said, well, I was thinking wrong about all that. I said, hey, I could be wrong about a million things. Who knows? And I said, but you haven't posed one shred of evidence that indicates I'm inaccurate. He said, well, like, what do you mean? I said, well, you're always quoting Sitchin or someone like that. He said, yeah, and I said, well, Sitchin's been proven wrong a dozen times.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I have a personal friend that was a Sumerian scholar, and in 3 other languages as well. I said, I was going to challenge Sitchin on Art Bell and get a proctor, someone that could judge that they both would accept, put those 2 together and see which one was correct. That's because this guy, my friend, is actually a scholar. Anyway, long story short, Sitchin's people screamed and hollered, we'll never go on. I said, the reason you will not go on is because you don't want to get exposed. But the point is that I said, you want to quote like the Sumerians or whatever. I said, I'll give you a quote. I said, you're not going to like it. And he said, why is that? And I said, because you have to look at all literature, all of it, not some of it. Mine's right and yours is all wrong. It's not like that. I said, you have to analyze all of it carefully. I said, in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, a reptile being walks in and talks to this woman that was created by God and tries to destroy the family with a lie. Now, if that story is true, and I think that it is, that's not any different what reptiles are doing today.
That's what society's doing today. You're right.
I said,
all but design.
I said, I do whatever you want, say whatever, think whatever. I don't care. I said, I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. Whatever you want to believe it's like the length of your hair. It doesn't matter. Cut it, dye it green if you like, or what doesn't matter. It's just, those are just beliefs.
Yep. What
the truth is, what the facts is, what will bear up scientific evidence and will bear up as best we can prove with all these heaven hats, so to speak, that's going to be closer to truth than anything. That's going to be the Occam's razor of it. That's just the way it is.
What do you think they need us for? Sir, I used to go into this and I thought there were so many experiencers and that's what they flooded. And the more it trickled down and the more that I got to know, I realized there was a really horrible mental health issue running through the community also. That's a reality. There's also the reality of the people that are looking and you know, they don't know, like the bingo lady. That's a reality. They started to dwindle down where I would find deception. I was a mental health therapist for 7 years, and I was very good at that part of it, you know? So there was, you know, and it just seemed like the pool dwindled down more and more.
Yeah, we have 3 different levels of people's experiences that I won't get into it. We'll be chunking down a great deal into it. You would appreciate it a great deal. Others kind of want to know the short answer, so to speak. And the bottom line is that as far as most people are concerned, the alien, whatever they're doing, a lot of people believe that they're here to fix the ozone hole, make things better, whatever, you know, do whatever. Not that humans have done a really remarkably good job, so to speak. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the aliens here for other reasons. They will often use the ecology and things like that as their subtext for what it is they really want to do. For instance, one of the things we hear all the time, they're here to upgrade your DNA.
Yeah.
In fact, a PhD was hosting me on a show one night years ago. He said, "Yeah, that's what they're really doing." I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're supposed to be interviewing me. Now you're interviewing yourself."
Yeah, now you're giving your opinion,
said,
right?
He said, "Well, the Native Americans and Irish, he said 45% of the people in your studies are Native American and Irish and Celtic." And I said, "That's correct." You know, well, the reason is because the Native Americans are so spiritual. I said, "Stop the bus." I said, "You can't talk about black people if you're not black. You can't talk about Hispanics if you're not Hispanic. You can't talk about Jewish people if you're not Jewish. You can't talk about Islamic people if you're not Islamic. Everybody, there's these rules everybody's got." I said, "So I'm Native, Scottish, Irish, so I'm going to talk about all 3 of them. And I'm here to tell you, you don't know what you're talking about." I said, 200 years ago, if you came through Native American territory, I don't care whether it's Apache, I don't care if it's Comanche, I don't care if it's Dakota, you're going to get a haircut. And you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
It wasn't because they were
So
spiritual.
true.
It's because you're on their land. And that's the end of it.
Right.
You're going to pay the toll. And I
They
said,
don't care why you're there. Yeah.
yeah, they didn't care back then. I said, now, you kind of got this new age thinking that, you know, all Native Americans are super spiritual. They're not. They're people just like you and me. And some of them are spiritual and some of them are not. Some of them they don't care. They want to go to the casino and get a good job. You know, they want to help themselves, so to speak. I said, by the same token, I said, the Irish are they're very spiritual. I said, listen to me carefully. I am Irish. I'm Scottish. And offshoot of this Fraser clan. I said, listen to me carefully. I said, when you go to Notre Dame, there's a big sign there. It says, "The Fighting Irish." Why do you think they use the word fighting? Busting heads and taking names is all we've ever done.
Yeah.
I said, you know
I'm
anything
Irish
about English
too.
history?
Yeah.
That's what we did. And I said, my point to you is that you're trying to be super nice to a bunch of people and trying to make up for all the bad things done in the past by calling them spiritual and everything. And they're people just like anybody else. Some are and some aren't. That's all there is to it. I said, the question you should be asking is, why does the alien have an interest in 45% of our people being Native American, Indian, Irish, Celtic, and even there are a couple other races. We don't have to get into them now.
No, I have that. My lineage is the Irish and the Scottish, and I've never heard the Scottish pulled in, so that was interesting.
They are. And I was speaking at Roswell 3 years ago, and I did this big presentation for the city, and I said, I'll list another nation out I haven't listed previously, and I said it's the Basque of northern Spain. And 2 people stood up in the crowd, a huge crowd. And I said, yes. He said, we're both Basque. And I said, you guys have got a real tough background. He said, yes, we do. I said, may I ask personal question. 2 of them. He said, sure. Have both of you had, one of you had alien contact? He said, both of us. That's the second question. Do you people have a real explosive temper, so to speak? He said, Basque are known for it. He said, we've never been subjected by anybody. We don't take orders from anyone. I said, I don't think the alien would be here trying to upgrade your DNA. I think they'd be more interested in downgrading it if they could.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot easier to manage.
Oh, boy. So true. So true. You would have things all around you interrupting it, the electromagnetic field, so true. So true.
And here's some of our statistics.
Yes.
45% of our people, Native American, Indian, Irish, Scottish, Celtic. 31% have a rare drug allergy to procaines, xylocaine, novocaine, lidocaine, etc. Mm-hmm. That'll range from hives to coma. 65% have a report cravings for salt. It's like they have electrolytes and stuff that they seem to be out a lot.
Wow.
63% report night blindness to some degree. 72% report phobias of some kind, often not natural. Obsessive compulsive disorder after abductions, and this is a good example. Fears of bridges, elevators, and so on. 30% report smells of sulfur during their events or at home. In fact, if you've had an event in your home and the alien said, well, the alien was standing right next to my bed. That's exactly what they were doing. I know it all about it. Good. Get down on the floor, put your nose right next to the floor and see if you can smell a sulfur-like smell. Or it could smell like 2 other things too, but I'll leave that to people to tell me.
Like
88% have report unexplained bruises, burns, marks, cuts, scars, long finger bruises, anomalous marking, scooped out marks on their legs or arms, or strap marks where they seem to have been held down during their abduction event. 62% of women report gynecological anomalies, missing fetuses, endometriosis. 63% of the men report needle-like punctures of some type tampering with their body. Scars on the scrotum, usually a lump on the testicles for a period of time, usually leaves them sexually dysfunctional for a period of 6 months to a year. That's just some of the stats.
That hit home.
It does.
That hit home.
We had I don't know how much time we have left. I've got a couple of things I've got to kind of finish this up with. I wanted to.
No, you're good. Keep going. Yeah, I'm just. My breath was just kind of when you were saying all that. I was just like, it hit home. So
I know
yeah,
it's a lot to absorb. It really is.
No, it's great. This is what people need to hear. I mean, but like I don't usually emotionally shift. Like when you were going on that list, I was like, I could just feel it. But this is good. This is good for people. It really is.
Well, the one thing that a lot of people, like I said, refer to think they've been implanted, and some have. There's no question about it. There's at least one of my abductees is on here tonight, and I know for a fact that they've got an implant, and a lot of them don't want it removed, and that's okay. We don't pressure anybody to get them removed, because if you want it in there, it's your business. It's not anybody's business to tell you should or shouldn't get it removed. That's a personal decision, like any other decision about yourself. But what I want to tell you about is the things that people should be more concerned with than, quote unquote, an implant in my body somewhere. There are things. I did a presentation in England this last year, super big conference, and the presentation was on implants in general, which that got everybody's attention. I said, now I told you that because I'm going to tell you this important thing. I said, there are airheads out there on the internet who want everybody to believe that you've been implanted or chipped by the CIA, by the aliens. I said, isn't it interesting the word implant that was never even used before 1960, before I told people of what happened to me? Isn't that curious? It's like nobody mentions this, the statements like that's when the movie came out about the what's the name of the movie? It was the one where people were they call everybody copper tops and stuff like that for the movie, and everybody started these terms, but no one stated that, no one knew that before the movie. My point is that people do that; they start adding to. I said, so I'm going to tell you something, a new one, and you watch everybody take off on this one now. I said, besides the fact that there are actual implants from people, the alien does something that, in my opinion, is much more nefarious. What can I possibly say that would be more nefarious than an alien implant? Well, first of all, since 99.9% of you don't have one, you don't have that to worry about, do you? What you might want to worry about are the implants that are not visible. They're mental. Well, what implant would that be? I don't know what you're talking about. I love to go to conferences and ask these questions. I'll ask all kinds of questions. How many people have been abducted? A bunch of hands raised. And then I'll say, okay, how many people feel like your family is really not your family? And a lot of hands still go up that are abductees. Now, why would you think that? Your family is not your family. That's an app that's installed within you. It's an app. One of the biggest apps is in every abductee everywhere. And I'll prove this. How many people think you have an alien implant? About 15 hands will go up. And I said, okay, how many of you are going to go down and get an x-ray for me tomorrow? All the hands will go down. I said, the app in you, in any abductee, this is one of the main apps that they drop in every one of us, including me. I'm no different than anybody. You will destroy, ignore, or hide your own evidence. I said, now, how many people are going to get x-rays for me? Nobody raised their hands. Does anybody think that you might have been apt? That app, I don't care if you've been abducted. I don't care if you've seen a UFO or been close to a UFO. You've been involved with the UFO phenomena. I can almost guarantee you that app is already installed in you, whether you know it or not. That's what you ought to be looking for. But there are other apps. But one of them is your parents are not your parents. Another big one, this didn't work on me at all. You won't remember. I did remember. That's the problem. That's why I'm public enemy number one on these guys' list. I'm telling people the whole story. I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to tell anyway.
You're pushing right past that programming.
If you care about humanity, you have to do that. Yourself doesn't mean anything. My life, my experiences, they're a hill of beans compared to everybody else's life and their experiences. There's a lot of stuff going on. People need to know the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, some of the statistics give you a clue more about yourself as well, the ones I gave you. But the important thing is the big presentation I did there for this really high-level bunch of abductees and contactees there at that conference was the app presentation. I said, what you don't understand is that there are apps out there you don't know anything about, and a lot of them there may be only one or two that's been installed in you, that's all. But I guarantee you, they're in you. I said, my wife will sit there and testify left or right in the court of law that those apps work in me just as much as they do anybody else. I have to break myself to make myself something, doing things sometime, because it just happens. Just all I can say about it. But
Wow.
anyway, apps are a big thing, and I could do a presentation on that for 2 weeks. I mean, apps are amazing. They're easy to install. The wonderful thing is, the old alien hunter didn't learn about apps and then think, "Oh, that's interesting." Well, no, that's not. It's just interesting. The question is, being the alien hunter, I hunt them that hunted me, and later hunted my son. You hunt me, I'll get over it. I'm a big guy. You come after my children, and I'll hunt you down. I don't care where you think you're from. I'll find you, I'll find out all about you, and I'll expose you for everything you're worth. And I don't care who believes it or not, it's irrelevant. The only people who are going to get anything out of this really are people who can take this information and use it. If you don't use it, it's just information, and I'm just another presenter, and it doesn't mean anything.
Wow, because your child, you're right, because we were talking about this before. I said, Derrel, is there anybody in your family that's had experiences? And he said his brother, he's also his child. And when you said that, it struck me. Because when you're messing with somebody's child, you're on totally different ground. And I'm with you. Like I'm a hunter. I'll hunt, you're hunting me, I'm hunting you. But now you came for my child.
You're going to get what's coming to you.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, my son, the night he got abducted, I woke up at 2:30 in the morning instantly, and it's like I was turned on, not woke up. And I ran as fast as I could past his room because I knew he wasn't in the room. I knew my daughter was in her room. I didn't have to look. I knew they were after my son, not her, not me. And I found him in the dining room looking out the back door. And he was there for a long time. I watched him, and I said, "David, what are you looking at?" He said, "The little red light." Well, that's a screen memory. That's a leftover thing to make you think nothing happened. And my wife walked up on me right at the same time, looking at him, looking at me, and said, "What's going on?" I had never told my wife about alien abduction until that moment, because I hoped that at my last event, which is quite violent, that was the end of it. I didn't know they were going to come back for my son. The point is that he went to bed. I told her everything, 2:30 in the morning, and she's sitting there listening to this bizarre story of 10 abductions that took place over 13 years of my life, from 4 years old to 17. And then, unbeknownst to me, my son rigged up a crossbow in his room and aimed it at the door in case they came back. If anybody had opened that door, me, his mother, his sister, would have had an arrow sticking through the middle of it with a broadhead arrow. Probably
he legitimately had okay. Oh, wow. That's how.
He didn't have a bad dream. He was going to get whoever got him the night before. He knew something was wrong. Anyway, he asked me, in fact, the family begged me to work with him hypnotically and with other techniques we have, and I didn't want to, because I didn't want to know. I did not want to know. And I had my suspicions, and I did not want them confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is simply that I found out that not only that I was right about when they came, the time and everything, but in my last event, there were 5 beings that showed up that I've never described. And in those 5 beings, they were not the alien. They were the ones that hatched, made, cloned, and manufactured the alien to fool us about their alien. Doesn't mean there aren't aliens out there somewhere. I'm not saying that. I'm saying these guys aren't them. We've been played. And everything the science has been telling us, quit inviting them into your house, so to speak. Good advice, you know. So, long story short,
yeah,
I found out that one of the beings that showed up in his event was one of the 5 that showed up in my last event. And to show you the difference between the alien and the ones that hatch, clone, and manufactured these beings. If one of these, let me give you a couple of quick stories. I was speaking at a conference in Los Angeles, and while I was there, at the end of the conference, I noticed this black guy, about 6'4", just to look like Superman. He was so perfectly built, like a football player or a gymnast or something. And he avoided me for 3 days in that conference. He walked way around everywhere I was at. Last day, I'm loading all my stuff up, getting everything ready to go. And he says, "Mr. Sims, may I speak to you?" I said, "Yes, sir. I noticed you've been avoiding me for 3 days." He said, "Yes, sir, I have." He said, "I want to draw a picture. I want you to tell me if you've ever seen this." He starts drawing a picture of one of the 5 beings that was in my last event. And I took the pen out of his hand and finished it. And all he said is, "Oh my God, oh my God." He screamed it, "Oh my God," and he ran away. That's the last I ever saw him. He was horrified that whatever that was real. It's not the alien. It's much worse.
Wow. Now you've got me
So,
curious.
in my opinion, we're in trouble, and they and for your audience here, I got to tell this. I got to tell a funny one on MUFON here, because it really happened. One of their best investigators asked me to speak to a bunch of their investigators up in, I think it's Minnesota, and so I went to his home, and he said, I said, "What do you want me to speak about?" He said, "Tell them the truth." He said, "Make it on implant, all of it." I said, "That's going to get me and you in a lot of trouble." He said, "Do it." I said, "Okay." At the end of the presentation, I said, "Some of you doctors have taken upon yourself a position that women that have had alleged alien pregnancies, missing fetuses, and this sort of thing are, number one, lying. They had sex with someone and they can't explain it to their husband. 2, they don't know their body very well." I said, "That's pretty insulting to a woman, in my opinion."
Right.
3 is they just went out and got an abortion, don't want anybody to know about it. I said, I don't think that all those are bad answers from a doctor, but when you have other evidence, you're going to have to look at it. And I said, "So I want to show you the worst implant I've ever seen." They said, "What's that?" And I pulled up sonograms with an alien fetus inside a woman. That's just one of our cases. I said, "I've got cases of alien fetuses in people from Florida, Houston, Texas, and Los Angeles in the hospital at the time. These are not abductees whining about some whatever you think it is. These are in the hospital with doctors verified." I said, one hospital in Houston, Texas, 5 nurses were in an enclosed area. In other words, cameras are on. The patient has to be put in an enclosed glass area because they don't want any infection. And I mean, it's a specialized room.
Mm-hmm.
All 5 of those nurses ended up pregnant that night. And so did the lesbian patient who was in coma.
Wow.
I said, that don't happen accidentally. I said, 2 of the cases where we've had these so-called missing fetuses, that sort of thing, I said, the fetuses survived, and we actually know who the 2 people are. That's one I know personally. I said, my point to you is that you don't know what you're talking about, respectfully. Listen to these women. They may be telling you the truth, and the truth is just a little more difficult than you can deal with. And that's okay. In my opinion, they need to get another doctor.
So in my experience, they said that, well, obviously, like I said, what's the need for holding or restraining? And they said because of contamination. Is there something that you have ever found that they need to have such a sterile environment? Or do you think it's more like just a laboratory, like a medical procedure? Or Now you got me wondering, at first I was like, well, here I'm out there running my mouth. They're sterile beings. Everything's sterile. They have to, contamination. But now I'm thinking this sounds more like a medical procedure than
anything. Here's the problem. There was a statement made by Jacques Vallée. It was a brilliant statement, I thought, on his behalf, and he made a statement that just was brilliant. And he says, he said a lot of the medical procedures that are performed on these abductees, he said, in my opinion, is reminiscent of something you'd read in ancient history about something demonic attacking a human being.
Yeah.
He said, these are not medical procedures that medical doctors go along with. It's not even close. He said, just because it seems medical and somebody alien looking did it, doesn't qualify it to be whatever you think it is. I know in my experience in the alien implant phenomena, I couldn't understand what was going on, but the wonderful part was they said it won't hurt. It did. I was wide awake when it happened. I remember the screen they used. They mimicked my mother's voice, so I would go outside and wait for the craft, and it showed up. I mean, this is I'm gonna go to New Mexico, and so I mean, I remember every bit of it. I mean, it's cold out there. This is winter time. I'm like freezing, and but I'm sitting there waiting on them, and there they showed up. Next thing I find myself in a circular room on a table. I call it the slab. With my feet elevated about 11 degrees, and they began the procedure. And it won't hurt and all that. Well, it did. But a needle that was about 11 inches long. It could have been smaller. I don't know. It put basically my nasal passage, and then they jammed it right, and it felt it go behind my eye, and I heard the bones crack, and of course it hurt. I was screaming. They don't care. You scream as loud as you want to. Nobody's going to hear you in space anyway. Like in a movie, Alien. Nobody hears, nobody cares anyway.
Nobody's coming running to your rescue. That's
nobody's
true.
Coming.
No.
But the important thing out of all of that is I overheard what the other guys were talking about, why they were doing it. That mortified me. I was only 12 at the time when I went to college at NMSU, and when I went to a special scientific gathering of specialized electronic equipment, I went and had parts of my brain and other things in me analyzed with this equipment because I wanted to see if there's any truth to the so-called memory that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I made it up. Who knows?
Right.
I didn't. It all showed up on electronic equipment. Exactly what they said they were going to do, they did. And anyway,
what do you find this looks like? Like in if somebody's in somebody's brain, like is there a physical? Is there any sort of marker or anything that would show up maybe on like an MRI?
Well, in this particular case, the way to think about it is. We went on a thing called a mind mirror. Mind mirror is basically a portable EEG. It's really neat. It lights up your brain left and right hemispheres, alpha, beta, theta, and delta. And the neat thing about this machine is if a genius like Mozart is playing a song or whatever, when he's playing, his brainwave pattern will show up while he's playing that song. You can record that. Then you can put that screen over here, and then you can, while you're playing the piano, see if you can match his brainwaves. Would that be useful to have the brainwave pattern of Mozart while you were playing the same song? Well, you might end up sounding just like him, and you might develop some of his skills. So the mind mirror is a remarkable device to play with.
Oh, yeah.
And they tested me on that, and I won't say what they found because my wife was standing there scratching her head, and the tech was scratching their head, and they finally called the owner of the entire operation, And he tested it and looked at me and walked away. I mean, he didn't say another word, because what you're looking at on that screen should never have been. It can't be. It just can't.
Wow.
So that's how I found out that everything they said they were going to do, they did do. So anyway, I want to tell you about a couple other things. One lady challenged me at the conference in England when I was there. She said, aliens are here. They're helping us. They're teaching our kids advanced physics. They're doing things you don't even have a clue about. I said, don't presume to know what I know or what I don't know.
Right.
I said, you're treading on some really stupid ground here. You don't know what I know. I don't know what you know. I don't presume to know. I said, so I'm just going to leave it at that. I said, but I brought for those of you like my friend here who thought, I said, first of all, I said, I'm not picking on you. I'm telling you that the things they're teaching your children is our physics.
Yeah.
They're not teaching you their physics.
Mm-hmm.
None of your kids are going to go out and build a UFO over this. They don't want you to know anything about their physics. Nothing. I said, trust me on this. I know what I'm talking about. I said, so you can mull that over all you want. I said, but I'm telling you that some other people have had experiences not like your children who had wonderful experiences. What I'm telling you is there are people out there that have had experience. I said, I brought the forensic report of 2 dead children out of Dallas, Texas, out of their abduction. I said, the whole forensics report here, anybody wants to read it, they're welcome to. I've got the actual photos of the children. This is one of my cases. I said, I never tell people about stuff like this because, well, it doesn't sell books. Nobody wants to know that. Nobody wants to see that. That's just negative. You're just being negative. I said, no, I'm being truthful. Whatever happened, I want to know about it. As an investigator, I can't investigate cases where wonderful people as a police officer, Mr. Officer, wonderful guy came over and gave me a sandwich today. Wasn't that wonderful? I want to report him for that. Isn't that great? We're not going to put that in the police blotter. It's not going to happen. But somebody mutilates your child or something, yeah, we're right in the middle of that one, and we were. I said, by the same token, I said the report's there, and no one ever came by and picked up. No one even looked at that file down there. But for the whole audience, I mean, hundreds of people, 1,000 people in the audience. I said, anybody welcome. You can ask me any questions you want about it. I said, no, I know all about that case. I said, does this happen all the time? No, it does not. I don't say that. I don't mean to imply that. That's what I'm telling you. If it was your kid, it would be a big deal.
Yeah.
Since it's somebody else's kid, you can ignore it and say, well, that's just an anomaly. I said, I've got film footage of an elderly woman skinned alive in her bed and not a drop of blood on her in Brazil. I said, I've got another guy. This guy, in his event, was carbonized. The cattle were carbonized, several cattle, the chickens. His dog was half carbonized, and he's totally carbonized. I've got pictures of every bit of this stuff. And the Central Intelligence Agency came down and took all the evidence with them. I said,
they did. Oh,
they
yeah.
did. They got all of it, like they did in Varginha and so on. My point is simply that I'm not trying to be negative or create a negative impression for people here. I'm simply trying to tell people there's more to the phenomena than we know, and that the alien wants us to know. And that's just, I'm sorry, that I have to look at everything, all 7 hats. It's the UFO hat, which is a hat I wear, but I got to tell you, we all have the UFO hat, and the problem with the UFO hat, it's fairly easy to fool. It is. And there are people in the UFO community who have fooled people in the UFO community for years, and some of them are still doing it and getting away with it.
Yes. You're right about that.
Guy told me that Al Biedick is one of the best people in. I said, don't get me wrong. I like Al. I know him personally. But he made the mistake with his girlfriend of showing up at one of my handwriting conferences. And I was doing a handwriting analysis on liars that night. Guess his girlfriend
Oh
grabbed
God.
his notes and ran in front of everybody and showed everybody his handwriting. I said, don't do that. We're this is all personal. This is private. This is not for everybody to look at. She said, but wireless are all over his handwriting. Well, I already know that. I didn't want the whole world to know it. I mean, make
Right.
a living just fooling people in the UFO community. I mean, if they want to buy into it, that's fine. But that's my point is, it's believe whatever you want to. This is a fun one for your audience. I'll do this real quick. This is a FLIR. A FLIR is this forward-looking infrared device. And if I can, I want to show this to your audience.
Yes.
Show them a picture of me if I can. If I can get that. Okay. Everybody, can you see the picture of me in there?
Oh yeah. Now yes.
Okay, there. You see every detail, every square inch of my face you can see, and it gives you temperature, every detail.
Yes.
And that's what a FLIR does. And I always get these people in conferences, and they'll always say things like, "Oh, there's an alien in the audience. I know all about them. I know all about the aliens. I know more than you think I do." And okay, enlighten me. They're here. They're among us. You don't know who they are. I said, okay. Where do you think they're at? And there's government agents out there. They're all out there. They're just watching us. And I said, okay, I'm open to it. Show me one. They're just there. And I said, okay, I'll pull out my FLIR and I'll point it toward the audience and I'll tell the audience what I'm doing. I said, there's some people here that believe there are aliens sitting in the audience among us. I said, you know that the temperature of an alien is going to be different than yours, noticeably. And if I find somebody out there with a temperature varying quite a lot, non-human, I'm going to let us all know about it. Good news for you. There's no aliens out in the audience right now. Sorry.
Lower
the problem
temperature.
is when you make these type of statements, you can get caught doing that. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't a hybrid out there. It doesn't mean there wasn't a MIB secretly hiding behind the curtain. It might have been. I don't know. I don't know everything. But I'm just saying a lot of the stuff that people say is provably incorrect. Just,
well, I think it's too because they're building the story right off the next. Everybody's saying hybrids. We're part alien. Some people legitimately think that, but you're right. That's not the case.
Hybrids exist. I know I've got pictures of them. Small ones, very small, really. And it's from the intelligence community. So I know the stuff exists, but when people tell me this stuff and they say, I know all about it. Well, I want to see your evidence. Well, I don't have any. Then why are you telling everybody you know everything when you don't? You're telling them your opinion. Why don't you say, this is my opinion and I believe this? Well, it's like a guy told me, he said, I don't believe in aliens. And I said, well, I don't believe in the Great Wall of China. Well, it exists. We got pictures of it. I said, I got pictures of UFOs too. Got pictures of aliens. Well, I don't accept that. I said, well, I don't accept your pictures of the Great Wall of China. Does that make the Great Wall of China disappear? No. Whatever it is just as real as it is if it's real. Period. Right. It doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. Belief is not relevant. What is the evidence? I said, so your stupid opinion, none of this exists. I said, thousands and literally millions of people have made up the same story around the world. They're almost identical for 100 years. Give me a break. You don't know what you're talking about. I said, I have information hidden away that whenever you do that, go through our big interview and all that and their questionnaire and so on, there's a lot of information I pick up off of that. And people, sometimes they'll get paranoid. They'll say, it's like you're reading my mail or something, because how would you know all this weird stuff about me? I said, because I'm one of you. That's why. I've already been there 50 years ago. Wake up. You weren't even born when I was discovering this stuff. I said, my point is that that we have to be, we hold things back in our investigations that nobody knows about. Tell me all about what the aliens look like. And because I always get that all the time. The ones that picked you up in the last event, those 5 that you tell me all about them. And I said, no, you tell me all about them. You seem to know. Well, I know all about them. Okay, well, tell me all about them then. Tell me about the ones that no one knows about that only I know. Go into great detail because I know everything about them. I know every detail. And well, they were dressed in white robes and they have long white hair and they were sitting there at the great table of the wise and all. I said, you're so full of crap. I said, I can't even begin to tell you how disgusted I am listening to you. I said, now that may be true. There are some aliens somewhere that do dress like that and do all that. I said, these don't look like that at all. They don't function like that. I said, I promise you, every person, I've only got 8 that I can put my hand on and say, I believe absolutely their story, that have seen one of these 5 beings. Every one of them ended up horrified and terribly hurt. One of them ended up with grand mal epilepsy. Another one ended up with other difficulties as well. I said, my point in telling you all this is simply that that these beings that made, hatch, and clone and manufactured him, they're not here to visit with you. They're not here to talk to you. They don't care how smart you are. They don't care if you're a genius. They don't care if you're a carpenter. They don't care if you're Gene Dixon. They don't care if you're Billy Graham. They don't care. I have a study which I send out to people if they're interested. It's called 6 Reasons Why They Probably Take You. And you get to play the game. And I give them the 6 reasons. 2 of the reasons are they're interested in your psychic or spiritual ability.
Yep.
Well, I don't believe in all that. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what they think. What you think doesn't mean a hell of beans. You're not solving anybody's problem.
That's one of my qualifying questions, because every real experiencer I found has, and that's a part of the evaluation. That's
well. Let me get into detail of this real quick, briefly. The 6 reasons, and then I said, first of all, they're not looking for Gene Dixons. They're not looking for Billy Grahams. That's not what they're looking for. Everybody thinks that's it. That's not it. It's what you do that's different than everyone else.
Yes.
It's not the same. Second category, science and technical. You know or can do things and process data differently than other people in that realm. And people just, anyway, when you play the game, it's a lot of fun because you get to find out stuff like yourself. The third group, I said, is the one I fall into primarily, and it's the area of people who learn physiological or psychological things with little or no training. And one lady challenged me in front of Dr. Carla Turner and her husband at a big conference in Las Vegas. She said, she stood up in the middle of the crowd and said, prove it. And she really went after me. I said, okay. I said, I don't like to use myself as an example because it sounds like you're just bragging. And I said, but I'll use myself as an example because I can't prove it with anyone else. I can with myself. She said, well, tell me. I said, okay. I said, I have a 3rd-degree black belt in martial arts. I have a 4th now. I said, a 3rd-degree black belt in martial arts. So what? A lot of people got martial arts black belts. And I said, this is not like Taekwondo where you can pay for your belt in advance. It's like a college degree. Have you ever known anything about Shotokan or Kyokushinkai karate? No. And I said, obviously. I said, it's like getting a college degree to get to that level. I said, you don't have a clue. She said, well, so what? A lot of people got that. And I said, not a lot, but some do. I said, but I've never had a teacher. I said, did you hear what I just told you? I've never had one lesson in a martial arts yet. I said, I can tell you a lot more, but I don't think you're going to buy it. Well, what else? And I said, well, I
shoot like a sniper.
I said, I listed several other things, and she just got real snippy. I said, let me tell you something. I didn't use the word apps of the alien. I used the apps in reference to myself. I said, one of the things that I'm capable of, that's which I have on film, and I have it on, I did a demonstration for the Central Intelligence Agency and demonstrated it. I said, I can transfer my abilities to walk over fire and over broken glass to people at will. I said, do you want to play? I said, we'll go out there and build a fire right now, and you can walk over it first with all your arrogance and see how well you do.
Good for you.
And I said, I can transfer it to someone else. We'll let them walk, and they won't be burned. Isn't that interesting? I said, so you get burned as the skeptic and not as one who isn't. I said, my point to you is, just because aliens can do things doesn't mean that we can't. It just means you don't know how to do it.
Yep.
So sit down and shut up. I think everybody's tired of you anyway. And she did. Everybody started clapping their hands. It was a lot of fun.
That's so true. Yes. No, there's mind blown. Absolutely mind blown. Yeah. The energy outlets, I can fire them off. Like it's crazy, some of the stuff, and people, they don't understand. I'm like, there's so many things, and I don't know. Like, I guess, and this isn't going to be a short answer, but I was recruited. I think what they found me, or how this whole thing happened, was the gifted and talented program. I was also born a medium, see spirits, do all that, the whole 9 yards. What do they want with us?
They'll never tell you that. And anytime they tell you, I promise you it's a lie. It's like the stupid DNA stuff you hear on the internet. They're here to upgrade our DNA. Listen, you can send me to another planet with half a dozen DNA specialists, and when we finish, within a week or so, we'll have enough samples. We'll tell you everything you need to know about the people on that planet. They've been here for how long? Oh, thousands of years. And they still don't know anything yet about you.
Oh,
why do you think they would need to do a DNA testing on you? Well, because they already have all the DNA on anybody. That's not what they're here for. It's a ruse. It's a red herring. That's for you. That's chewing gum for the brain. It has nothing to do with the aliens' real intent and purposes. And you have to study the alien from a lot of different levels to understand this stuff. Otherwise, you're guessing. It's just that simple.
Right.
One of the things that we also note about our abductees is a number of them have Asperger's disease. We didn't tell anybody that until Art Bell years ago asked him to keep it quiet, and he agreed to. Then I finally let the cat out of the bag. The different levels of the spectrum of Asperger's,
Yes.
we find that with some of our abductees too. It's really amazing.
Wow. Just let all this sink in, it's like, wow. Makes so much sense, though. It really does. I said there has to be something with the autistic spectrum, but anytime there was different learning, you're hitting the nail right on the head.
Yeah, but the problem is the alien's never going to tell you what it is they're looking for or why. And so we have to do that. But we can't make up stuff and say, well, I think this. What I think doesn't mean anything. What I can prove, what evidence actually shows, that's what's important. That's what's good. That's really, really neat. But I'll give you one last example, if you like, of an implant case that is rather astounding to me. I had a man write me here a while back. He said, Mr. Sims? I said, yes. And he said, I'm from this state. And I said, okay. I think the alien stuff is the biggest bunch of horse hockey I ever heard. And I said, okay. That doesn't offend you? I said, not at all. I said, it's just a belief system. You're not very well informed, in my opinion. And in your opinion, I'm totally uninformed because I think that the phenomena does exist. It's right. Anyway, he said, I said, why are you calling me about something you don't believe in at all? And he said, well, my father believed in aliens and all that. And I said, okay. He said, he he said he believed aliens took him, and we said everybody in the family. He said, I'm a banker, and I don't, and a lot of our family are educated and everything. We think he's, on the ragged edge here. I said, that it certainly makes sense from your point of view. I understand that. I do. He said, what I want to tell you is that my father died here a while back. And I said, okay. I said, I'm sorry to hear that. He said, of course, none of us believed his story about aliens and all that. And I said, okay. And he said, when he died, he lived in a small town. And my dad always told us he had an implant in the back of his calf. I said, okay. What'd you do? He said, we're friends with the mortician. I said, you went and checked it. And he said, we did. He said, the amazing thing we found was that my father had an implanted object in his calf. And we got it. I want to send it to you for your evaluation. I said, I would love to study it. And we don't want to be known. I said, I never reveal who anybody is or anything about anybody. It's none of anybody's business. Who's who, it's irrelevant. And he said, excellent. And so I got the implant and did the study on it. And I said, tell me, I said, if I may, I'd like to know more about your daddy. He said, well, he told me about his love baseball and he loved Lou Gehrig and, and all that and the history of baseball. And so I said, well, that's wonderful news. And everything he described was almost identical to my dad. I said, my daddy was an abductee and he had an implant in his leg, in my opinion. And he says, oh, this is all crazy. I said, of course it is. I said, but the point is, it's really an important point. I said, we're connected more closely than a lot of people have an idea. I said, we had a meeting one time, our first meeting of abductees and contactees in the same room in Houston, Texas, back in the 90s. We set up a support group meeting. And we set up two groups of food. We put up the vegetarian food over there for especially the New Agers and others who are trying to eat perfect and do all these neat things, taking care of their body and all that. And on the other side, we put salsa, potato chips, every salt thing you could imagine, like a salt lick for cattle is what it was. And then we just sit back and watch. We didn't say a word. Of course, your contactees would gravitate to the vegetarian side. Abductees would all graduate right over to the salt lick, so to speak. And we didn't say a word. We didn't say a word to anybody. And after a while, the contactees would graduate over to the salt lick, and they'd start in there as well. I said, isn't it really funny how this happens? We never told anybody anything about it. We just did it. And one lady,
people don't realize I have a forensics specialization in my master's degree really quick, but you set up a crime scene. You don't put all that information out there or you'll never catch who's doing it. Like you'll never figure out who is who.
You never tell them. This is just stuff that you set up and anyway, we've done this with a lot of different things, but let me give you one last case study that would be really, you'll like this one. This is a modern day one, happened just here a while back. A friend of mine, who's a police officer, Dallas, Texas, he's a specialist cop. He works at a university setting. The reason they need a cop there is because the things they're working on, I have a top secret clearance. These people working there have top secret and above. His job is to make sure nobody gets in there or nothing leaves that building that's not supposed to. That's his job. We've been friends for years, off and on, a long time ago. And he called me one day and said, I've had an experience and I need your professional opinion. I said, I'll do what I can, sir. We're slow as molasses, but we're pretty thorough in what we do. And he says, okay. He told me about his event, and I said, all right. And I said, what did you do? Did you do anything to defend yourself? He said, yes, I did. He told me how he did it and what he did. And I said, would you send me the object that you used? He said, I will. And he did. And then he also sent me the alleged implant, what he thought was an implant. In my opinion, it isn't, but it's evidence in the case. There's no question about that. It doesn't have to be an implant. Evidence is evidence. He sent that, we're studying it. And then a few days later, I hear this phone call, and he said, I got a text. He said, you need to email me, talk to me immediately. And I called him up on the phone. He says, I'm a little concerned. I said, you sound alarmed. He said, I am. That's what happened. He said, well, 2 special agents from the FBI just knocked on my door. I said, what did they say? He said, well, they came from 2 different directions in 2 different cars to my house. He said, I identified myself as a police officer. He said, we know. I said, okay, why are you here? He said, and they sheepishly admitted to help you with your alien problem. He said, well, they probably know a lot. And they said, what happened? He said, I had an alien encounter and I defended myself and all this. They said, is there any evidence? He said, yes, there is. He said, could we have it? He said, I sent it off to be studied. He said, here's the part that scared me. They said, you sent it to Derrel in Houston, Texas. He said, I never told anybody that. I said, nor did I. I said, listen to me carefully. They're not interested in me. They're interested in who contacts me. It is very important to them. They're just protecting their crew, so to speak. I said, there are people in the intelligence community who contacted me with above top secret clearances. And the very first thing I tell them is, please don't start telling me a bunch of stuff. I don't want to know it. I don't need to know it. And you don't need to tell it. You're going to lose your career. Stop it. Let me help you with your event. That's what you need help with. I don't need to know. Don't violate your oath here. I never have, and you shouldn't. It's just that simple. So anyway, he told me about his FBI guys showing up, but he said they knew exactly where the evidence was and that you had it. I said, of course they do. I said, that's their job. It's just that simple.
I've always been told they follow the people who follow the phenomenon, who are experiencing the phenomenon, not necessarily the phenomenon itself.
Well, I don't know that. I don't want to make everybody paranoid. You got to understand, he's a top shelf cop.
Yeah.
Doing some top shelf cop stuff that I didn't do. And I've got a top secret clearance. So they're going to be watching him and the doctors. They want to make sure the Chinese aren't getting this stuff, or somebody else, the North Koreans or whoever. They do that. And if they find anything out of the ordinary, and alien abduction is one of them, they're going to explore that. But they didn't doubt his experience at all.
I bet not. And it's not a bad thing to protect yourself and the things that you have here. I mean, it's not a bad, just to know, not to become maybe overly paranoid, but to know what you're dealing with when you're getting into this.
The thing I tell people is that the government's not watching everybody. Everybody thinks they are. But the government doesn't know much of anything. The only people that know anything about the UFO, UAP experience, really, are a few whistleblowers and the people that are not talking and the ones that run that show. And as I told a top attorney on a cruise ship this last year, and a top disclosure guy, I said, they've got me on this panel with you guys. And I said, I I don't mean to be obtuse here. But you guys are very sharp. You're very good at your jobs. I admire what you're doing. I love what you're doing. You're not going anywhere. Yes, we are. I said, with respect, great respect. I want to disagree. I said, are either of you familiar with the term rendition? Yes. I said, it exists. It's imprisonment without trial. I said, I was threatened with it when I was in the Central Intelligence Agency because I knew some things and said things that I should have kept my mouth shut about. And I was threatened with 40 years.
Oh, man.
If they ever thought that I had violated my oath, which I didn't. My point is simply, I said, you haven't met the business end of this business yet. You've gone out and talked to some whistleblowers, and they've said wonderful things that were amazing and wow and all that. I said, I'm not talking about that. I'm telling you, when you get to the business end of this, these people don't play.
They're
They're
not
not afraid of you. They've been expecting you to show up with a congressional committee for 70 years, and you haven't even shown up. You think they're really afraid of you or Congress? Forget it. I said they have a budget that's so big they can't. It's top secret what their budget is. You can't even know what it is, or you can't know where any of the money's going for any reason.
Nope.
I said that's one of the most dangerous things I've ever heard of in my life. I said that ought to be on public scrutiny. It should.
Should be.
There's got to be some safeguards. I get all that. I said this stuff that's the government run amok. I said that's a terrible way to run a government. I said anyway. I said, but the bottom line is that I think that no reason for everybody to run off and get paranoid. I heard a click on my phone, so therefore I'm being watched. Click on your phone. That stuff went out in the 1990s. 1990s.
Yeah.
You think better technology than that?
It's
and
painful at points.
Why would anybody spend 5 years of their life following you around? You got no evidence. I'm sitting here on top of a ton of evidence. They ought to be following me around, like you would think. Maybe something.
Oh, the ones that are targeted. I'm like, let's not even go there. But it seems like certain people want so badly to be a part of something bigger.
Yes.
And I think that's a disorder all on its own.
Yes. That's, I did not invite this phenomenon to happen to me, nor did I want it to. I don't want it to, but I'm here, and my son's involved, and therefore we're going after it. But I'm after it for other reasons too, not just me and my son. Other people are having these same experiences. A guy asked me yesterday, he was a police officer, by the way, he took me to dinner and he said, told me his story, and I said, with great respect, that's just a story. Well, it's real. I said, you missed my point. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying it's a story. Where's your evidence? If someone walks up to you and says, that man over attacked me and he beat me up real bad and he had a big knife, a butcher knife, he's running down the street, and you look over, there's no guy running down the street and nothing, and they're not bruised or anything. He said, well, I'm not going to believe a word they say. I said, I can't believe a word you say without evidence. I need evidence. I said, doesn't mean your story's not true. It means I can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
I have 10,000 other stories just like yours.
You have to weed through
some. Not of much value
yeah.
Other than collation of data. I said, but the ones that are going to give us the best evidence, these are the ones that we can do something with. The fluorescence and an implant or whatever these things are we're looking for. And the cop would tell me some things. And I said, well, I'm going to put my cop hat on here for a minute with you. That's one of the things we're going to look at in your symbol, in your profile when you fill out my big questionnaire. I want to look at your handwriting. What's that going to tell? I said, well, whether you're deceptive or not would be an important thing. I said, more important, I said, I want to know if you have any propensity to exaggerate, lie. There are a lot of things I'll be looking at in your handwriting. I'm a handwriting analyst. I said, so the last guy examined for handwriting in court got 10 years in prison. I got him. I said, so I'll be looking at you too. So anyway, I said, so I'm not just overwhelmed with your police ability and all that. I said, I'm impressed with it, and I support the police 100%. I said, little thing I got right there. I said, I support police 100%. That's the Texas Rangers. I support them 100%. I said, and other police agencies. I said, without police, we're surrounded by a pile of savages, and you have nothing. You have virtually little to defend yourself with. I think the police they're here for a reason. I used to be one, and I said, yes, there are bad ones. I get that, but I said, try to call your local whoever you think it is instead of the police and see what happens. I'm not going to help you in a murder case. So anyway, so we have everybody in the world. We have people that were literally carpenters. I like to divide people up differently. We have people who are geniuses. Everybody always thinks, well, they're only picking up geniuses. That's why they got me. Well, they didn't do it in my case. And then I said we got geniuses to get picked up. We got average. Most of them are just average people. They don't know why they got tagged. They have no clue. We try to help them with that. Third of all, I said we have another group of people. They're so, in my opinion, and it's just an opinion, so ineffective. That's some of the things they believe and do. I can't figure out how they find food. And
That's so true
they
too.
get picked up anyway. So the alien he's not after your IQ. He's not after your spiritual ability, your IQ, your psychic, your whatever it is you think you got. You don't know what he's after. You just think you do. And that's where he's got a hand up on everybody because they don't know. They just have no clue.
No.
That's what we're trying to find out. And last thing I want to say to your audience is, if you have any evidence or a case that you'd like to talk to me about, you can email me at, please post this if you would.
Sure.
At Derrel W. Sims at mac.com. That's DERREL WSIMS at MAC.com. You can email me there in confidence. And until we get our website fixed, we got a little bit of a problem there. Thank you.
And then, Derrel, I just want to make sure that I have it correct. I posted it in chat, and then, oops, let's see, is that
you're good.
This one right here? MAC.com.
If you have evidence or have a case of anything from alien pregnancies, implants, or I don't care what it is, you're welcome to send it to me, and I'll be glad to review it for you. Like I said, sometimes we're slow as molasses, but we're pretty effective at what we do.
Wow. Well, I'm going to be sending you something of mine because this is absolutely, I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for just being, you've helped put some of this in order. It's going to take me a bit to digest a lot of it, but I think that you're just what the doctor ordered.
Well, I play a doctor on TV, but I'm not a real doctor. So that's all I can do for anybody. But we do have a team of doctors that listen to me. When we go to an implant surgery, you know what the first question they ask me? What do you want us to do? They don't have a clue. They know how to remove it, but they don't know what type of tissue. They don't know what we're looking for. They don't know how to excise it the way we need it done. They've never been inside the alien's head. When you can hot mic the alien, you get to hear what they're really saying, not what they told you or what somebody thinks they might believe on the internet.
Oh, wow.
When you hot mic them, you get to know. That's why
Yeah.
I don't trust him any further than I can throw him. Last thing I'll say is there was a great person, one of my favorites, named is Jesus Christ. He said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he give up his life for his friends." I don't think that means you have to die for your friends. I think that means you have to be willing to pay that kind of a price if you need to. Every soldier in the United States military understands that, and they do that. They put their life on the line, and God bless them for doing it. But my point is that you ought to have that kind of compassion for each other. And if you don't, we're all going down the tubes together if we all ignore each other. We have to be on each other's side. All of it.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, I want to thank you so much, Derrell, for your time, your information, and the clarity and I mean, you've really helped put a lot of things in perspective and way we should all be moving forward with evidence. And if we really want to get to the bottom of this, stop the bullshit. Keep that out of it. Let's.
Well, Mad Max and Kurt and the rest of you, I thank you so much for your comments, Spiritual Ascension, the rest of you. Thank you so much. I read your comments, but I couldn't talk and do all this and read all of it, but I loved it. And Coley, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your wonderful audience tonight.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I will be in touch. And like I said, I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Good deal.
Wow. Derrell is beyond, for somebody out there doing this, I have mad respect, and hopefully we could get him back on and do more, because I just feel like that information was so important. It really was. And if I'm at a loss for words through all of this, I'm just going to really need to digest and process it all. So like I said, his information's in there. Please, if you think that this is something, and you want to get to the bottom of it, you want to know the truth, then reach out. It's hard to digest. I get that. But if we want to know, and we want these answers, and we want to keep our children safe, we want to keep ourselves safe, and we want to stay maybe a little bit ahead of this, or at least up in the game, I think this is very important to know. So we got Stephen Bassett coming on next. Everybody be good to one another. Like Derrell said, this is very important. In humanity, we don't need to be fighting one another. We really don't. That's a part of the programming. So on behalf of SNX Radio, thank you for taking the journey into the unknown. And I will be seeing you here on the flip side. We'll be streaming everywhere we're streaming now. So this will shut down, but go ahead and jump back in if you have a free moment. So love you all.